Hi, everyone. Today is a special episode for us. We are super excited to have our first great guest on Raising the New Earth podcast and to engage with her in our discussion today about duality, teenagers, and the balance of life and career. So, we would like for you to welcome our friend and colleague, Ye'ela Rosenfeld. Ye'ela is an accomplished screen and theater director and writer. She worked with the famous director Roman Polanski. She wrote the short called Hedgehog that we will touch on today. She also directed the play Marx in Soho by American historian Howard Zinn that is currently running for the next few weekends in Der Nister in downtown LA. So, Ye'ela, I have seen almost every one of your inspiring projects, and one common thread that I can attest to is that you have the ability and gift to take your audience on a journey, on a almost like a soul searching journey that they wouldn't otherwise go on. That said, tell us a little bit about your background and how your passion for this thought provoking genre began for you.
Hi. First of all, I'm very, very happy to be here. Very excited. Um, yes. So I was born and raised in Israel. I've been a filmmaker and a theater director pretty much my whole life. I moved to the United States after actually living in Prague in the Czech Republic also for 4 years, where I worked with Polanski, like you mentioned. And then came here for graduate school for AFI, which is the American Film Institute in Hollywood. Um, and there I directed 4 short films. And after that, just continued to write and direct. Um, and yes, my genre, if you will, or what I'm interested in is to confront people with difficult questions. I know it's not, might not be for some the most popular, right, of all genres, but I feel that art should challenge us to justify its existence. So this is why a lot of my works end in somewhat ambiguity to enable the viewer to ask questions that I believe are important.
I I love that, Yaila. And I did watch her short film, The Hedgehog, and I see that, and I'm not familiar with your other works, but for sure, just as far as art allowing us to be challenged and to ask those difficult questions, I totally agree is super important. And I would love to know just in with the hedgehog and if you want to give just kind of a brief synopsis of what it is about, but essentially, asking that question of, do we have the capacity to create evil or to do evil deeds? Any one of us is kind of what I got out of the film. So I would love to know kind of what you saw as the importance in making a film like that, and at this moment in time too.
Sure. So Hedgehog tells the story of a caregiver in a nursing home who accidentally finds out one night that one of her patients is a former Nazi criminal hiding under false identity. And once she finds that out, she decides to spend the night with him and get to know him. So they play a board game together and they converse. And he seemed to be a very charming, very funny, very lonely old man. And the idea was to confront the audience with that exact fact that there can be someone who is vulnerable, who does need care, who is lonely, that our heart goes out to, all the while knowing that he committed or was a part of the most horrible crime in recorded history. And so this is kind of what the film works with. And the resolution, if you will, there's not really a resolution, is that the caregiver tries to confront him with what she knows, but he neither confirms nor denies. So my idea was that we will be left with the questions: how come good people can commit horrible crimes and unimaginable crimes? And I feel like that there's a lot of studying and researches around the Holocaust, and there are multiple explanations as to, historically, economically, what happened, with fascism, the First World War, and so many avenues of people trying to understand how this could happen or what led to it. But I feel like that what is the most difficult to confront is that it's not just the Nazis who committed those crimes, that if we really looked at who did it, these are people like us. And this is the hardest thing to comprehend, that all of us are capable of doing it. So I feel like that only by presenting the criminal in a way that we can understand, we can ask ourselves this question.
Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
That's such a good point, right? With you raising the question of, are we capable of doing evil? It brought up the idea of duality. And I think that absolutely duality exists, right? So I think that both great light and great darkness always exists within each and every one of us at any given time simultaneously. So I feel that the body and soul represents two polar opposites. Like the body is me, 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 me. I need to replenish me and keep that shell going, while the soul is all about I need to give, I need to give from myself. Basically what that means is that even after we have done the worst thing in the world that we may think, there is still great light within us. It's still available. So while our mind might tell us we've done, when we do an act of sharing, or we be really generous or really kind, and our mind is telling us, oh, we are such an elevated being. In fact, we are also darkness. So it still exists within us. And what we learn from this is that it's a powerful understanding that not only we can elevate from the lowest place to the highest place in 1 second, because the duality and totality of the light exists within us, but taking it a step further is like the best opportunity to reveal and draw the greatest light and blessings into our lives is in the moment right after darkness, right after that complete disconnect.
Right. And I do, and I like that you said duality, because I think that if we are honest, we all have the capacity to do that. And it's very hard to admit, right? Especially when it has to do with something like genocide. But I think that the question that we need to ask ourselves is, I mean, there's a great book called Ordinary Men, which actually looks at the unit, the Einsatzgruppenkommando, the unit that executed women and children in cold blood, and actually looked at who they were. And there were people with family that celebrates the holiday that had kids themselves. There was nothing special about them. They were actually not even anti-Semite. They weren't considered to be too extreme, or were not radicalized by the Nazis from their youth. They were, as the book said, ordinary men. So I think that the question that we need to ask ourselves, if it is a given that good people are capable of the unimaginable, what are the systems that we put in place that enable good people to commit horrible crimes? And that's the broader question that that I feel we should all think about. And this may be why that event is such a big warning to all of us.
Yeah. Well, and as far as that being such a difficult question for us to all confront, and as much as we don't want to look that we could potentially be capable of doing such terrible things, I think it's actually very dangerous to not recognize that part of ourselves. That when we reject that piece of darkness within us, or that we just kind of write away evil deeds as just being done by evil people and we're good people. So of course we don't need to recognize any bit of that in ourselves. Then that's how that process starts. It starts by, because the human mind can justify a lot. Our minds will, from a fear based perspective, from something that threatens or what we perceive as threatening our existence, gives our mind this, flip, I guess, in that we're doing something for the good, even though the act itself is extremely terrible. And so with that, with your thought on the systems that are in place, one thing that I've been kind of looking at more closely is like the process of dehumanization, where essentially it can start slow. And I think that that's, with when you look back at Nazi Germany, they didn't just start, the Holocaust didn't just start with like, oh, we're just gonna, round up a bunch of people and their neighbors are going to tell on them and all of these people are going to be complicit. But it started with slowly making people fearful, or these people have disease, or these people. So it's very important for us to recognize, I think, when that is happening in society. And I think that with all of the divisiveness that's gone on just in the past few years, we are, and I don't want to write like all over the world. I mean, there's genocide happening as we speak. So it's hard to kind of, that we don't see it here. But I think first it's important we recognize that it does happen in the world today, and it's not just evil countries or people that are evil. That it does take people that are good, or have that, we all have that duality, that they think they are doing it in the name of good. But that even within our own backyard and right here, that we should be aware of when that's happening. So I
Yes, I love what you're saying. I do agree that the first step is definitely to recognize it, to recognize that we have it, because it is a slippery slope. And if we do recognize it, then we will see it more clearly and we will be able to stand up to it. So
There's
yes.
yeah.
a really beautiful book that Jewish educators read to the lower grade level, and it's called The Terrible Things. And it's a story by Eve Bunting, and it was written for children to teach them to stand up. It does allegorizes the Holocaust. Um, and it just illustrates both the horrors of this time and the failure of the masses to protect each other. And she does it so brilliantly by using symbolic representation of this historical event. And she manages to simplify and strengthen her message. So this is something that we're giving to teach the lower grade levels about the Holocaust in a non-traumatic way. And I came across a similar poem that's called They First Came. It was written by Pastor Martin Niemöller. And it goes, first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. So to me, that just means when something happens somewhere else, it is a responsibility to help. It can often feels like this is someone else's problem, but no. If we do believe that there is a ripple effect in the world for the good and the bad, then what is happening there may also be happening here. So when you're talking about the system, where you're talking about not standing up, to me, this poem, as well as the story, The Terrible Thing, really represents that. Like, what are we doing now to help other communities, other people in the world?
Um,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I love that poem. that resonates so deeply. I think for me, and I would love to get your take, Ye'ela, but I, like sometimes it's hard to really. There's so much in the world that is unjust, and it can be hard to kind of separate out what's truly happening and to really know how you can help in a meaningful way. I know for me, like the more that I just become clear with myself and kind of like touch in with myself, then I can more, it's not about like changing the world by necessarily doing like big, huge actions, but like by just connecting in with what I can contribute to kind of raise the consciousness level or raise, inspire people. And I feel like you're doing the same with your films, but I would love to know kind of your thoughts on that. And
Yes, 100%. I mean, I think that we live in a day and age that we are capable of receiving a lot of information and a lot of overwhelming information. And as human beings, we're not designed to being able to handle all of these really, really crushing problems that we are faced with just by the information that we consume. So, for example, if we look at the war in Ukraine, right? So we feel that we see the crimes against humanity that are being committed over there, but the feeling is a feeling of helplessness. The feeling is a feeling, it's not in my hands. What can I do? And there's a great deal of distress because you watch that and you don't have the ability to react to that. So my take on it is to really start close, close to you, close to home. Really look at your neighbors. Look at the person that may live on the sidewalk right by your house, right? Because as much as we would like to, we the climate crisis or geopolitical relations, as much as we care for them, we may feel overwhelmed and helpless. Now, if you're an artist or an educator or a journalist and you have the capacity to reach to a lot of people, that's great. But I feel like that you can make a great deal of change even if you don't. And in Judaism, there's a saying that if you save one soul, it's as if you saved the entire world. And I really agree with that. And I think that if we open our eyes to see what is the immediate problem in my neighborhood, on my block, in my child's school, and what we can do there, that's huge. That's huge. We need to be careful not to get overwhelmed.
so true. I love that. Just being able to start local and start just with your neighbor. Even a simple smile can
Mm-hmm.
change someone's day around, and it literally is like that ripple effect. Yeah, I
Right.
love that.
And it's such an important message because we live in a world where we hear about everything, right? Even the other day, I was
Right.
working out at a park, and my friend, who is always so optimistic, she came to me. She's like, "Wow, we are in their shit." I said, "Why do you say that?" And she said, "Because this country and that thing and that thing." Is like, okay, take a deep breath. What can you control today? Let's start with this. Like, what can you control? Can you control how wonderful the way that it is that you're raising your kids? Can you control how kind they are to each other? Can you reach out to your community? What can you control within your inner circle that I believe would create the ripple effect for the rest of the world? We always talk about that scale of consciousness, right? It's almost like I always imagine that the planet, the world has this huge scale, right? Those that you see at the farmer's market, but huge. And every good deed contributes to the scale tilting a little bit to the right, right? And then it balances out. So what I told my friend is like, as many horror stories you hear about, this is how many miracles there are. And journalism is not going to be in a hurry necessarily to write about miracles, but they exist every single day. Good deeds happen every single day. And what Ye'ela said is absolutely right. Let's start with our inner circle. So, what can you do today to improve the situation of your family, your neighbors, you know, the men across the street, or whoever that might be.
Yeah. So true. That reminds me of a Mother Teresa quote that was like, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family.
Oh, that's
And
beautiful.
and that's so, I mean, what a revolutionary act to just be with your children and be present with them
Yeah.
and teach them how to be kind and show up in the world in a way that's, you know, a change maker, because they will be inheriting that world one day. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think you mentioned fear. So I wanted to touch a little bit about a fear. I think that fear creates so much. And I know, Ye'ela, that you work with teenagers. And I wanted to ask you, what did you see that were the biggest challenges and triumphs while working with the teens in your community? And what were some of the tools that you were able to give them, especially during these 2 years that we all struggled with?
Well, first of all, I like to give it to the kids. They have been very, very resilient, and it's really to observe in awe how they handled it. And I work with teens from eighth grade till senior year in high school, and while I saw so many adults falling apart, it was very, very impressive to see how they handled it, and in what creative ways they were there for each other. And so first of all, I'd like to begin with the positive, because I really think that they deserve it. Well, I work with teens. First of all, I must mention this, that are very privileged. So I work with teens in LA who are mostly upper middle class, that are kids to parents who are highly educated. And so this is very important to mention, since I do not work with youth at risk or with other communities. So this is very important to mention. Now, as far as the challenges, that's not to say that they deal with depression and anxiety, of course, on high levels, and a lot of questions of gender identity and sexual orientation, and also more, and that's just for their personal issues, but also, of course, global anxieties that has to do with anything from the climate crisis, the U.S. politics, abortion rights, and ending with anti-Semitism, because this is a Jewish teen group that I lead. So with according to the ADL, a 37% increase in anti-Semitism this year alone. They feel it, and they feel it in their schools, and they're pretty anxious. So that has been a very big topic lately.
So what are some of the tools that you give them to deal with that? Because we just talked about, you know, how we can get a little less anxious by what's going on in the world. So what are some of the tools that you share with them in that regard?
So first of all, it's important with working with teens and this is something that I have been telling parents, I have been telling teachers, is to really, really respect them, and respect them in an eye level. So for who they are. And this is very important, because teens, when they face authority, they immediately smell the condescension and the patronizing, and they shut down. And if you come to them from a true place of empathy, and that's really number one, is when they would open up. And you will discover wonderful human beings that are intelligent, that are deep, that are responsible, that know what they are doing. And this is very important. So I give it to the kids, but I would also tell parents, respect, number one, and trust is the first step to an open dialogue, to a conversation. And I hope this might help parents a little bit, because what I'm noticing is that the biggest anxiety and worry for a parent parenting a teenager is that the teens stop talking. So they don't know what's going on. They are left in the dark. And that is very scary. Because if your kid is being bullied, or if you don't know, and they're locked in the room, they're with their device, and you just imagine and imagine, you get anxious, you start to try to take things and put restrictions, and you don't know what to do. But the problem is that they don't open up to you, they don't share with you. So number one is to create that environment where you can have a dialogue, because with dialogue comes trust, and with trust comes friendship, and then they will tell you if something happens, and they will listen to your advice. And so you cannot start at the end. You cannot start with just like, okay, you're not give me your phone, right? That's just going to isolate them more and make them even more depressed or anxious. So it was just very important for me to say that, because I see that all the time, and I'm always, I wish that there would be more dialogue. But in the teen groups, that's exactly what I give them. You want to share with the group that you smoked a joint at a party? Great. I want you to say that, because then the more you share, I will know if it develops into a problem or not. But I trust you that you can go and party and you'll be okay. And that's a leap that you need to make. And then they begin to open up. So the issues really range, from middle school to high school. I mean, middle school is more oriented around friendships and friend groups, and later on it gets to other issues. So basically the tool that you asked, so the main tool that I give them is, first of all, you have an open door. You have someone that you can talk to. That's key, that will listen to you and that you can trust. As far as global anxiety and things like anti-Semitism, climate, social justice, politics, all of that, my saying to them is that they need to take the word helplessness and throw it in the trash. That doesn't exist in their book. So basically empowering them to understand that they have an enormous power. And I'll give you an example. And without getting political, I hope, but I'll give an example that one session they came, and I think it was after one of the mass shootings. I think it was the grocery store, and then followed by the parade. There was this one horrible weekend, and they came completely distraught, and we don't know what to do. What can we do? This will never stop. We're afraid to go to school. We're afraid to, all of these things. And I found myself just yelling at them. They like when I yell at them, because it's always positive. But I found myself yelling at them and telling them, you do not realize how much power you have. I don't want to hear there's nothing I can do. So basically what I told them, if you have, these phones, right? You have social media. If you now organize that nobody goes to school tomorrow, teens stay home. Just a simple thing. Pass the message on. No one is going to school tomorrow until somebody up there in Congress starts to move things around, right? You will see the attention that you will get. You will see the politicians lining up. You will see that things will change, but it's up to you to start it. And I gave them an example of, and Noah, as teens in Israel, we participated in a lot of protests and rallies and demonstrations, and we were very, very involved in the political process. And here I feel like that they're not as involved, and therefore the feeling of helplessness.
Yeah.
So that's what I give them when it comes to that anxiety.
I like how you empower them. And to me, I mentioned it in another episode of our podcast. I said, fear is not an option. I think fear creates so much. And the word that you had them toss out the window, the word helplessness, it's not helpful to feel helplessness, right? You got to shift it. And I feel that when we are in fear, other people can put us in a weakened state, in a weakened position. So for me, I always look at fear as something that should not be trusted because it's an unknown territory. What is really going on under that fear? Is it lack of control? Is it lack of tools to face what it is that I think I'm seeing, right? Because also when we view at the world, it's a semi-illusion. When you take a cup, you fill it with water. What do you see? Do you see the half side that is full, or do you see the half side that is empty? We can, like we just talked about it, we have as many miracles as we do have um, horror stories, if you may. So for me, it's fear is not something that I ever certainly do not want to act upon. And it doesn't show us the reality of a situation. What is that situation? We don't know. Even during the pandemic, where we had a situation, do we really know the truth? Do we really know the truth? So the answer is, depending on what news you followed. But we can use fear as a tool that points us in the direction that we need to go. It can show us the paths that we are afraid to explore and the doorways that we need to be courageous to walk through. And spiritual transformation not only comes about when we are pushing ourselves beyond the comfort zone. Fear shows us exactly the boundaries of our comfort zones that we may move past them. So for me, all fear is a message to change and to grow in our connection, in our directed steps in life. And if we hear that message and change from it, we can ultimately remove any type of fear that we have in our lives. And it's always about shifting the consciousness of, we call it in Kabbalah, the desire to receive for the self alone. That is me, me, me. What can I get from this person right now? And switch it to the desire to receive in order to share for the sake of others. And when we make a conscious effort to connect to the positive, we are then really connected and there is no room for the negative. Just like people who are so anxious, usually it's when we have time to think about things. So how about we take that time and devote it to others? Put your energy into others. Join the Peace Corps. Join a movement. Join, regenerative farming or join farmers for any movement that you feel in your heart you are called to contribute. Do that for others and notice your anxious thoughts reduce drastically.
I love that you said the word pushing because I have to say something. Hebrew is a very cool language, but the word pachad in Hebrew, if you reversed it, it says dachaf, which means to push, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's the opposite of fear is actually pushing. Even Spinoza said that there's no fear without hope and there's no hope without fear. So I exactly tell the teens, look at fear as a positive things, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is an emotion. It's a that is instilled with us for self-protection, right? So the outcome of it is positive, and exactly like you said, use it to really do something, to be empowered, to change. So 100%.
Yeah. Yep. I also love, Noah, how you were talking about like right in front of you, what can you do here? And like, and I think it's great to try to act on the level of Congress and, that level. But I think that oftentimes that can feel a little, too out there or too political, but it's like, what can you do? Can you go volunteer at a homeless shelter or go get your hands in the dirt at a regenerative farm? And it's that connection that once you feel that, it transfers all that anxiety and fear into something of empowerment, and that you feel that for that day or for that time you were making a difference. So the mind doesn't have that time to fear. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know that we're all mothers. So being a director and an educator and a writer, how do you balance life with family? And I want you to say what you said to me when you were in my kitchen about, yeah, utilizing some of your teenagers to babysit as well.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. It's really, really hard. It's challenging. And there are many moments of guilt. Um, and when my daughter cries, like she literally told me the other day, enough work, enough work, enough work, because I am gone a lot, and the nature of my job is I don't work during the day. I work my work starts at 1 p.m. So
Mhm.
and goes till usually 8 or 9. So I'm not at home when they are. And that is very challenging. So to answer your question, it is very, very hard, emotionally, especially. Um, but at the same time, I like what I do, and I'd like to model that. I want them to see that you can do something in life that fulfills you, that gives you purpose, that gives you happiness, and I feel like that is very valuable. I also, you know, think that if I'm bitter and frustrated and thinking that I'm missing out, it's not going to do good to them. And I don't want them to be the cause of me giving that up and feeling frustrated. So just dealing with the challenge and with the challenges on the practical level. Like you said, I'm finally at a point where they're old enough. My kids are 4 and 7, and they're old enough for me to let my at least my high school seniors
Mhm.
watch. And it's a wonderful, heartwarming feeling because my teenagers, my seniors are kids that I raised. So it's really kids that I raised now watching my kids, and it's kind of like a one big family, and it's very nice. It's very nice. Those seniors, I taught them when I was pregnant with my kids. They
Wow.
remember it, and now they're watching them, and so it's really nice.
It's beautiful. And you give them something to do other than sit and feeling, the feeling of I can't do enough in this world. So they're busy doing rather than feeling something it may be out of their control. Brooke, how do you balance work and life
I'm still trying to figure that out. But
now that she's
my
not napping?
yeah. Well, she actually is napping right now, which
Oh,
is
good.
nice. So um yeah, I that it's still something that I'm like, my huge thing I think is that I used to do so much like yoga, and that's what I don't really do as often as I would like. But I have like started in the morning, like just doing, even if it's like 5 minutes of sun
Yeah.
salutation. So that's where I'm like really feeling like I need to bring in more of the balance. So because and again, it's that recognition of like, the more I can kind of give the things to me that I need, even if it's small, then I know that that's coming back to her. So
Yes.
yeah. And then I am very excited that next year she'll probably go to preschool for like at least 2 or 3 days. So
Yay!
it'll be nice to have a little
Life
bit more.
changing for her
Yeah.
and for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. She needs it as much as I do. Like
Yeah.
the interaction will be so good for her. Yeah. What about
Yeah.
you?
Uh, so this is the
You're
first year that all our kids are at school in elementary
that,
school.
that's a good feeling.
Oh my God. And the first week, I was like, what am I doing with myself? And not that I don't have anything to do. I'm in school, I'm working, I'm doing the podcast. But it's like that's a strange feeling not to have at least one of your children coming with you to shopping or doing, things you need to do. But I balance it by trying to do as many things as I can when they are at school. And that's why I stopped the education world, Ye'ela, that she is in, because I was a Jewish educator for almost 10 years. I was the director of Performing Arts Academy. I taught the kids in elementary age performing arts. So for me, I actually left that job, and now the time that I work is in the mornings where I accept clients and I do my schoolwork, and the time that I'm available for them is when they come back from school. So that's what I do.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it took some shifting of things around, right? And a lot of courage to say, okay, I'm no longer interested in the job that I was in. And the reason why I got into this job, and actually Ye'ela got me into the Jewish education realm, is because I wanted to be with my kids and I wanted to raise them and still contribute to society and my community. So that's quite a shift. Yeah.
I love that. But I think it's so important to like be honest with yourself and like, okay, this, know when it needs to look different than it does and what you need to
Yes,
shift around to make it happen.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So,
it's a hard one. It's a hard one. It's yeah, the it's definitely a hard one to know exactly, to know when the moment where your job is not, as much as you like it, it's not worth,
mhm,
you know,
Yeah.
the relationship compromised.
right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it seems to me like just more that you can check in with yourself, like keep yourself in check of like, okay, how am I doing here? And like you're always gonna. I feel like it's like a dance, right? There's
Yes,
always, okay, I'm a little bit more over here, so now I need to go this way, and it's like, yeah,
yes, constantly with
yeah,
everything.
right, exactly. That's how
Yeah,
that's how life is.
yeah. Even
Really is.
now, I find myself nutrition wise, even now it's getting colder. I'm wearing, a long sleeve shirt. I never wear a long sleeve shirt. And now I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do my shake because I'm freaking cold. What am I going to do? Okay, and I'm finding myself grabbing food to nourish me from within because I'm cold and I want to hug and everything slows down and I miss my family. But coming to that realization took me about 2 weeks of emotional eating. So just trying to find comfort in food until I said, okay, no, what is it that you need? What do you need?
Yeah,
Okay, I need to change my food. Okay, it's root vegetable, so it's soups, it's chili, it's warm food. So the shake in the morning and the salad that I'm used to at lunch are gonna go out of the window because it's not what my body needs. But what you said is that realization. Where is your homeostasis at every single point in your life and in every area of your life? How can I reach that homeostasis?
yeah, absolutely. Because that's always going to be changing because everything around us is going to be changing. So it's like, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
That dance you mentioned, exactly that.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
so true.
So,
Yeah.
Ye'ela, anything else you want to share with us before we let you go? Where can people find your work? Maybe they would like to come to the play if they live in Los Angeles.
Sure. So we have three shows coming up this weekend and the next. And if you go to if you look up Der Nister, you could, and which is DERNISTER, and you can definitely find a link. The show is called Marx in Soho. It's basically a show about Karl Marx coming back from the dead and landing in Los Angeles and in the heart of the homeless crisis and looking around him and ask American audiences, so how do you like it? So it's a very thought-provoking, philosophical, historical play. If it's your thing, please come by. Hedgehog actually screens this Saturday night, also in a New Filmmakers LA Film Festival. It's also in downtown LA on Saturday night. If you
Beautiful.
want to watch the film, you can watch it there. Or my work is all at my website, which is Ye'elaRosenfeld.com, which is probably very hard to spell.
We'll put it in the show notes too.
Yes,
So,
yes, yes. Great
yeah.
idea. Brooke to the rescue, always.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, Brooke?
No, I thank you so much, Ye'ela. This was like such a wonderful discussion. I think yeah, covered a lot of good, worthwhile things to discuss.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I love listening to your podcast, and it is inspiring to me every time I do, because I am a very cerebral person and very practical, and listening to you kind of tunes me and puts me in touch with something that is more spiritual and intimate and makes me think of the things that I overlook. So I think it's very valuable what you do. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for
Oh,
saying that. Yeah. Love that.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ye'ela. And we'll see you on our next episode.
Right.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.